This morning we're going to be talking about troubleshooting duplicates across multiple tables. I have a video which is titled TSQL Find and Remove Duplicates, and I believe that video handles individual tables and uses a common table expression, so I'm going to refer you to that video when you actually find the table that's causing the problems. But this morning I want to discuss what to do, how to find duplicates or track duplicates when you have multiple tables involved. Let's say you have 8 tables in a query, and so you have one table and then 7 tables that are joined. How do you find, and your query is producing duplicates, how do you track down those duplicates or those multiple values? And so one of the quick things I'm going to point out is, and the first thing is that when you work with people who are highly educated, are very knowledgeable in databases or whatnot, you have to understand that just because you pull up a query and it's written by a coworker doesn't necessarily mean, even if they have a degree in computer science, does not necessarily mean that they understand why the syntax is the way it is. And I'll give you an example. I worked with a colleague who had a master's in computer science, is much smarter than I was, but made a comment that he didn't understand the difference between a left outer join and an inner join. And he didn't really care to find out the difference between the two. And several of his queries that he had written reflected the fact that he didn't understand the difference between the behavior of those. There's this assumption that we have in our culture, and we're going to probably continue to have it going forward, that someone who is highly educated knows what they're doing. What you'll find in the work world, I found this both in sales, I found this in IT, is that sometimes people, they have a degree or they have a piece of paper because they want to give off the perception that they know a lot. So they crunched really hard in school, and then after that they're like, okay, now I can take it easy because people are going to look at my piece of paper and say, this person knows what they're doing. And that's not always true, but sometimes that is true. Another funny example of that that's somewhat related is we at my current company, we're hiring for positions. And one of the guys that I work with, who's worked there for 5 years, and I don't even think he has a degree in computer science whatsoever, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't. But he is probably one of the most knowledgeable people that I know on TSQL and replication and mirroring and all that. And he's done interviews with a lot of people who have computer science degrees, because again, we live in Austin and there's UT here. And he told me that 90% of the people he interviewed do not know how to insert data from one table to another. These are people with degrees. We're not talking about someone who's has a degree in something completely unrelated or doesn't have a degree. And so his point was, he's run into all kinds of interviews where just something that simple, from inserting data from one table to the next, which is a very simple process, people don't know how to do. And so what they did, he said, is we finally switched over to just a phone interview instead of having an in-person interview, because it was just such a waste of time to go through these candidates. Like, what were you doing in school? Like, what were you developing in school? And what I found a lot of times is there's a lot of theory, like, well, this is how a foreign key works, and this is how a primary key. There's a lot of that, but there's very little. Okay, here's some of the things you're going to run into when you're in the field. So this video today is going to discuss something that I've run into multiple times, which is, you have a big query, and a big query being defined as multiple tables being involved, and it's producing the incorrect amount of values, and so we're troubleshooting. Now, a couple of the starting points I'm going to give you are not necessarily the only places that you can start, and they may not be the only errors, but what I've found is that 95% of the time, these 4 places are going to be where the errors are at. So we're going to look at this query right here. And I used a very, very simple example because I don't want it to get overly complicated. But you'll see we select from a customer table, we're interjoining a billing table, and we're interjoining a customer address table. And you will notice as well, we're getting 3 Johns, and the ID of John is the same. So it's not a different John. So you have a John here, which is a 23 amount, $23.50, $23.50, and we have a John here that's $50. You also notice the address is the same. And again, I know there's no city and state, yada, 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 but this is just a simple example here. So let's suppose this was a billing query, and we looked at this and we were like, okay, we have 3 Johns and we should only have 1 John. So the first thing, and this is what relates to my very, very first point I made, is verify the join types, inner left, outer, etc. Okay. Again, I'm not trashing on education. I think education is great. I think it's wonderful, but you will find that there are a lot of people who have degrees, there are a lot of people who have certifications, and they simply don't know the difference between this and this, or this and this. Okay? They just don't. And I know it's crazy. It's like, what were they discussing in school? I don't know. I can't answer that question, but I know there's a lot of people out there that are like that. So if you're troubleshooting someone else's query, one of the things that I heard too from another person with a computer science degree was the way you troubleshoot a query is you change all the inners to lefts or all the lefts to inners. And I was like, no, you don't do that either. You just verify that it should be an inner join or a left outer join or so on and so forth. You don't change everything in your query and then update the stored procedure. That's a really dumb thing to do too. And should it be an inner join? If it shouldn't, then change it. If it should, leave it alone. Don't sit there and change it. That's not where the error is at. So this is a point that when you're troubleshooting someone else's query, don't assume that they knew what they were doing. Verify. Okay. The next thing to do is to verify the join conditions. And you'll notice I put here filter 1. When I say that you should verify filters, I'm referring specifically to the join conditions, and I'm referring to the where clause. And you'll see there's no where clause in this case. Okay, so the join conditions here, we're first of all selecting from a customer table. We're looking at ID, and we're looking at ID. We're joining on the ID field, customer ID, customer ID. So billing is joining from the customer ID field to the billing customer ID field. So, I mean, if I didn't know anything about the table structure, I would pretty much assume that this right here is going to be a foreign key to this right here. And this right here is a foreign key to this right here, to this ID field. And so we can look at the table, which brings us to the next point, verify the join conditions. And the first thing we want to do here. Now, if I was in production, there are two things I would do. If I was in a production environment, I would do this, and I would do this. Okay, and the reason is you never want to select star, ever. You never want to select count star, ever. And then the other thing, especially in production, is no lock. You do not want to lock the tables. Not at all. Okay, so that's an important point. But for troubleshooting here, since we're learning this, we'll just go ahead and do this. I know for a fact there's only 3 values. So you have 3 values: John, Sarah, Bob. Okay, so we only have 3 customers. And remember, with this condition, we got John 3 times. Okay, and so let's look at our billing table, and then let's look at our address table. And again, what we're doing here is, custom address, is we're tracking down things. So customer ID, this right here is the foreign key to this ID field here. And we happen to know that ID 1 is John. So when we have customer ID here, there's John appearing 3 times. Now you'll notice something too. We have billing month, January, 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 January. And then we have a February. And then let's look at the customer address. Customer addresses. And you'll see we have customer ID 1, 2, 3. So this table right here, customer addresses, and this table, customer, are correct in the sense that there's 3 customers and there's 3 addresses, and that's the way that the data should work. Okay, so we verified the join conditions. That's how the structure appears. And again, you can also look at the constraints. If there's a foreign key constraint, if they've built the table structure right, you can verify as well by looking at the parent object ID and the reference object ID. Okay, and then one second, track duplicates in individual tables. I'm actually going to put this as 4. And this is not like, you don't have to do this technically in order. Verify the where clause. So let's go back to this. So we found the table that has the duplicates, or the multiple values, I should say. First thing is, here's John. He's appearing twice in January for $23.50, and here is John appearing for $50 in February. Well, right off the bat, we know, okay, well, we don't have a where clause here. Equals January. So if we do this, blam, now we have 2 Johns instead of 3. By the way, usually in a stored procedure, what you'll have is a stored procedure will have a variable that'll be like month or date or something, and we'll set month equal to January month varchar 25, and then it'll be where a billing month equals month, and that's sargable as long as there's an index, and there you go. So, and again, you would verify. This right here is a very, very simple example, but usually in a query like this, you'll have numerous conditions in your where clause, numerous filters on your joins. They can get pretty extensive. Okay, so we've removed one of the values. So now we're looking at billing. We're like, okay, so we moved the February value, which is correct. We're looking just for the month of January. Now we need to look at this one right here. This is a duplicate value straight up. Everything is correct except for this ID field here. But I mean, everything is incorrect in the sense of this ID field is indicating, you know, this is 2 because it's incrementing. But we have 2 values, same month, same amount. And why is that important? Because especially in billing, and I've seen these type of errors in billing, you know, the customer gets billed twice. By the way, if you've ever been billed twice, sometimes this can be what's behind it. And so, in fact, I had a credit card bill me twice one time, and I joked around with people. I was like, you need to tell your database people to learn how to track duplicates, and they had no idea what I was talking about. And I was like, yeah, that's what's causing that error. And I also worked at, a bank for a while, for about a half decade, and I remember them having duplicate like deposits, which customers just love when you deposit $1,000 and it appears twice. But this was, again, the error time and time again was they just somehow it got entered twice. And the purpose of building a database right is to avoid these things, and that's probably what they cover in school. The problem is it doesn't always work as well as you think, and so you get these errors. This right here is where you would apply the common table expression example. And again, I already kind of shot a video on that TSQL find and remove duplicates, and you would remove this value right here. Or you could always remove this value, but the point is you would remove one of these values. You would apply that common table expression and remove the duplicates. So let's put this as final, and then apply duplicate removal. The other thing, and I'm going to put this here, depending on the company. Some companies want to keep, I don't know why, but some companies want to keep all the data. If duplicates appear, they want to keep it, I guess, for tracking purposes. In which case, what you can do, as just a case in point, is you can always remove this join to billing, or what you can do as well is you can put your common table expression up here, and you can do the filter. You can do your filter basically of not removing duplicates, but selecting out duplicates, and you'll do a join on the condition that will keep it out. It depends, and that's one of the reasons why I put here, depending on company. Some companies, they don't want you to remove duplicates. So the big takeaways here today are, verify the join types. Don't assume that your colleagues know why they're doing what they're doing. I'm not trashing on your colleagues. I'm not saying they're idiots. But sometimes you work with someone and you realize, hey, just because they have a master's in computer science doesn't mean they're curious at all as to why they do what they do or why something works the way it does. Verify the join conditions and the sense of the filters, like join or join on. Make sure that those are correct. Verify the where clause. That's another filter. Make sure it's correct. Also make sure it's sargable. Track duplicates in individual tables. Look through individual tables. Again, if you're in production with no lock, select top one. If I'm looking for a specific account number, for instance, what I would do, since I know that in this query right here, if we look at it, you'll notice that John is our error. So what I'll do is I'll be like, okay, select star, and again I would do a with no lock, and I would do where ID equals 1. So I'm like, okay, let's look at that. Okay, there's only one value, and then I would take this away, and then I would do customer ID equals 1, and there you go. You have your three values. But the idea is don't ever do select star in production. I guess there might be exceptions to the rule. You might literally have 3 customers, but even in that case, that's just not. Always do with no lock, and always filter it by whatever account numbers throw in the errors. And then of course, finally, and like I said, there's a previous video on this, apply your find and remove duplicate filters to the table with the errors if that's the company process. If it's not, if they want to keep everything, then find a way to basically filter those out.